So many ugly things have been said about us, about our children, about our color, about our ability to learn. When that narrative becomes the reason why they should shut you down, then it becomes personal. Because now you're talking about my kids.
Tonight, a proposal to convert an elementary school into a new high school is pitting parents against parents and parents against Chicago Public Schools. The school in question, the National Teachers Academy.
A high-performing academic school.
There's no question that a high school is needed for this area.
Chicago, the South Loop, booming real estate, exploding population. The last thing we wanted to do was steal a school from somebody.
This is about gentrification. This is about tailoring to wealthy middle-class folks versus low-income families.
This whole thing is a sham.
What do we take stands for? Things that we believe are right.
This is the moment for me that I have to stand up.
Starting today, we will be ignored no longer.
Here they come! We're not going anywhere right now.
We will fight for our school!
You gotta take your mind out of we don't have power and realize the power you have.
It wasn't like they seemed angry, they seemed like focused, organized.
I feel like you don't see what we see.
We love our school. We love each other. We love everything that we built here together.
We keep putting forth these valiant efforts, and we keep losing.
This is not over with. Don't give up.
We can all unite and be one and fight for what we think is right.
So I would like to start out by inviting the director and producer of the film, Let the Little Light Shine, Kevin Shaw, to join me in conversation.
How's it going, Manauvaskar?
Hey, Kevin, good to see you, my brother. How's everything in Chicago?
It's great, man. It's a little rainy today, but we're hanging in.
Yes, excellent. Is there anything you would like to say to this beautiful group of folks that we have with us today?
Well, very excited to be speaking with you all today. Appreciate your interest in the film, and really just looking forward to getting into the discussion and talking, chopping it up a little bit about the movie and some of the themes and looking at narrative shift in film.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And before we start, I just want to big up your team. It's so hard to be a filmmaker, an independent filmmaker. It's so hard to make a film. It's so hard to make a good film. And it's extremely hard to get your film on television. And your film, Let the Little Light Shine, is going to premiere on POV on PBS later this year. Could you tell us a little bit about when it's coming out on television?
Sure, yeah. It's going to debut, as you mentioned, on their award-winning series POV on December 12th. Check your local listings, but it's usually around 9 or 10 o'clock your time, depending on where you are in the nation. So we're really excited about this national debut, common carriage debut, where every station, a PBS station in America, will be carrying the film. And it's really the opportunity, our largest opportunity for the audience to come out there and check it out. So, our film, it's an independent movie, something that, I started off on my own, basically, and built a team around to help bring it to life, as we do as independent filmmakers. And the movie debuted at the True False Film Festival in March of this year, and is played at several other festivals around the country, had a small theatrical release. And, now we're kind of digging into doing some more of this community work, doing a lot of impact screenings, outreach screenings, taking it to the people as intended, and really trying to shine a light and let communities dive into some of the conversations and think about how they can utilize some of the themes or the tools that are present in the film in their own everyday struggle or whatever that might be.
Excellent, excellent. And we're going to be talking about narrative shift. We're going to kind of ask our audience, engage our audience. We have some polls that we're going to use to engage our audience. I'm actually I want to launch one of them right now, if that's okay with you, Kevin,
Go
just to
for
get
it,
a
yeah.
sense, just to get a sense of who's in the room. All right, so folks, we're gonna have a poll pop up right now. We just want to get a sense of who's seen the film or who's planning to see the film. I'll give everyone 60 seconds to fill out this poll, and we'll continue. But Kevin, while that's happening, one of the things I was curious about, as you know, I'm a filmmaker as well, working on a story in Chicago as well, and I've learned a lot about the simultaneous closings of 50 schools in 2013. But someone who's from Chicago, I wanted to ask you, what was it like to be in Chicago at that time, or, and what have you seen and experienced in Chicago when it comes to schools?
Yeah, I think the 2013 school closings here in Chicago is a very disappointing time, very tragic time. As you know, a majority of those schools, they were all in Black and brown neighborhoods. So the impact that was felt in those communities was strong. There was a lot of harm that was done, a lot of displacement, and it set a lot of communities back, I would say, in terms of looking at public education and the future of our children, Black and brown children. So it was an upsetting time. And I think when the city decided to kind of have a moratorium of 5 years per se to kind of let things settle out in their eyes, they kind of knew the damage that was being done, regardless of what the administration at that time was saying in terms of cost cutting, in terms of saying that some of these schools were just not being utilized. When you have a school closing, what it does to community is very close to, losing a loved one. That's what it means for these communities here. It's a lot like losing a family member, and there's grieving that goes on. So families have to find, obviously, a new institution to send their children to, and then they have to rebuild relationships with their teachers, with their classmates. And not all that goes smoothly, And so, obviously, and there was a University of Chicago study that came out several years after the school closings that really perpetuated and showed how harmful they were to the communities. And so when this NTA proposal came up after this 5-year moratorium had resolved itself, a lot of people were concerned. Obviously, you could see why. And maybe there weren't as many schools that were on a chopping block per se at this point, but still, we all know what the damage of a school closing can do, especially when it's a Black and brown institution. The whole flip with this story, though, was that this NTA did not fit the quote unquote mold of what many schools that had been closed before in Chicago had fit, or had been defined by, per se, that being, an underperforming school or underutilized or what have you. NTA was a high performing school. It is a beacon for Black and brown children. And certainly it was a school whose education model, should have been replicated and sustained and celebrated, per se. And so that was the really intriguing part of this entire story of why would the city feel like closing a successful school be the answer to some of the problems that it was trying to resolve?
Yeah. Thank you for that, Kevin. I was curious about what inspired you to make this film. I mean, I know that you've worked on other, education-based stories like America to Me. You worked on that. You're part of that team. What really inspired you to make this story about NTA?
I really think it was that idea that I just brought up of the question of why would the city want to close this school that was high performing. And if you start to dig into the reasons why, and you look at the neighborhood of where this was taking place, it's in the South Loop neighborhood of Chicago, which is the fastest growing neighborhood in the city. You have a lot of white residents that are now coming into the area. They have a higher power, basically, in the social strata, a little bit more than the student community that attended NTA, and they really were trying to flex their muscle in this idea of saying that there wasn't a high school, but that they felt was suitable to send their children to. And so I really wanted to unpack these ideas of displacement, of this idea of what is suitable and what is not suitable, this idea of a Black and brown classroom. Can it not be successful? Can we, as Black and brown students, not be intelligent? I wanted to kind of really unpack all these things and look at it. And I felt like this story and this neighborhood, had all the opportunity to really dive down and really, try to unravel some of the complexities and the nuances.
Absolutely. And, was narrative shift ever something that you thought about as you were making this film? Is it something that, was in your mindset, when you were kind of jumping into this process?
Right. I don't know, like, I'll admit, I don't know if I was initially saying, hey, let me think about the narrative shift while I was diving into to tell the story. For me, some of this stuff, I think, just kind of came naturally, especially as me as a Black man coming into this scenario and recognizing this, just this idea again of trying to take away something that was working for the community. On a personal level, that gets you upset. You think of yourself as a young child who could potentially be in a school like NTA, and if I put myself in the seat of some of these children, I can directly relate to what was going on in that respect. And so I think trying to shed light and tell a point of view, share a point of view from the community was just like obvious for me. And I think a lot of times this community had not had the opportunity to really be seen and be heard, right? I think one of my favorite books growing up was Ralph Ellison and Invisible Man. And there's a reason why that book resonates with me, that idea of being invisible. It's something that, we live with as Black people in this country. And so anytime you run into an instance where you're feeling invisible, I'm going to take that at heart. And for me as a storyteller, well, what can I do to tackle that invisibility? How can I shine a light here in this respect on a community that's feeling invisible, that's feeling ignored, regardless of all the things that they're doing to try to get their words out and their point of view out? What can I do to try to shed light on the situation? And so that's where I stepped in as a storyteller. That's the best way that I felt like I could make a difference and, be part of the journey.
Absolutely. And, one of the, and I think you did a great job. One of the things that, we've, I've been thinking about, and I've been in partnership with, folks across the country in education through the partnership with Future of Learning, really thinking about narrative for public education, right? And we created this this document for folks who are interested, who are curious, about curating, telling stories around public education and how they could actually think about, while they're making their stories, ways and ideas that could support to shift the narrative around public education. So we're going to share that link in the chat for folks who are interested. You can definitely check that out. And, one thing I noticed is I put up a poll and I didn't get any responses. So I want to know what's up with that. If you're here, I expect for you to participate.
People did participate. We had responses. The majority of people, about 9 people, saw the film. The rest that they will watch it right after this.
Okay, excellent. Because I can't see the results, so I apologize. I saw zeros all the way through. So it looks like we're like at maybe like 80%, 85% of folks seeing the film. Okay, excellent. And we also, it seems like we have a class here, right? We have a class from the chat. I'm looking at this. There's a class from the School of Labor and Urban Studies. I see that they're coming up on Zoom right now. I think it's kind of dark in the room. I see y'all though. They're waving. They're waving. Can you spotlight that? Give them some love. Give them some love.
It's
You know,
awesome.
give them some love. I think they're all folks learning about education and learning about trying to understand narrative shifts. So welcome to the conversation. We're so happy to have you guys. And we're gonna keep this moving. So like one of the things that there it goes. Thank you for putting on the light, guys. Excellent, excellent. We're gonna be hearing from you guys hopefully as we open up this fishbowl later on in the conversation. You know, one of the things that we think about when we think about narrative shift, right, is advancing a bold vision for public education. So I'm gonna drop another poll, right? And we're gonna play, I'm gonna have this Jimmy Fallon moment. You know, I wish the Roots was behind me right now, you know, queuing up the music, but I don't got that. I don't got Roots money, you know, but what we're gonna do is I'm gonna drop the second poll, right? And I just want the audience, for folks who've seen the film, right? And when folks who might see the film later on, I want you to think about this, right? Was Kevin and his team able to hold on, let me go to the next one. Okay, let me launch this poll. I probably won't see the results, so I'm just gonna stop it in like 90 seconds in, and someone will tell me the results. Okay, here we go. So the question is, what was Let the Little Light Shine able to demonstrate a bold vision for public education that aligns with these values, right? And these values, right, are deeper learning, student-centered, equitable and inclusive, healthy and vibrant democracy, trust, respect, shared responsibility, and mutual accountability. These are all like values that we identified as being really important in stories when we're talking about shifting the narrative of public education. So as folks kind of sit with that for a second, because I can't see the results, so you know, I don't know what's going on there. But I want to keep the conversation moving. You know, there was a moment in your film, Kevin. You know, there's many moments in your film, and one of the moments I really appreciated was when you asked that question to Isaac, who's here today, right? Of like, why did you let us in, right? And he said, you know, if someone could learn something from this story, you know, learn something from our journey, you know, that would be worth it, right? And that really touched me, because it felt like, because, you know, we'll talk to Isaac in a little bit, but like for you, as your film has been traveling around, has been going a lot of places, how does it feel to like, you know that your film is like having an impact? It's coming out there, folks are engaging, they're trying to learn about public education, trying to learn about these important issues.
Right. Well, thank God we're able to go out and like be at some of these events, these festival screenings or theatrical screening, in-person event, and be able to connect with the audience, because without that, to be honest, it's hard to kind of gauge sometimes, you know, in the virtual setting. But when you are able to speak with people who have come out to the film in any of these venues, there's no doubt that the lesson that Isaac had wanted, you know, that idea of being able to leave an imprint on somebody based off of their specific journey, and their meaning the NTA journey, there's no doubt that people have learned and have gotten something from it and have been inspired by it. We see it in the conversations that we have with folks at these screenings. You know, you watch our film, and because it has such a strong activist bent, and it comes from activism that's coming from just an average everyday person. A lot of times, you know, we as just normal parents and people, and every people in the world, we don't feel like we have that juice to get up there and lead a charge and lead an initiative and what have you. And this film shows you that you can do it, you know, and it kind of gives you the playbook on how to do it. And you just watch that through Elisabeth and the other parents at NTA. You watch that even through the students, you know, through Taylor and some of her 8th grade classmates at NTA on how to do that, you know, and that resonates with people to the point where at some of these screenings, folks have come up to Elisabeth and said, hey, I can't believe how you did this. And here's my situation. And what do you think I should be able to do here? And she's been able to, deliver some great strategy and tips and advice and stuff. So people are definitely getting something from watching the film, and they're learning to not give up hope, most importantly, and learning that they do have a voice. It does matter. You do have power in your voice. You just have to activate it.
Awesome. Are you ready for some poll results? You ready for some poll results? Hold on, let me pull it up. So we have, it's kind of like we have 70% of people feel like yes, you totally did that. Like you were able to demonstrate a vision for public education that aligns with those values we named. And we had 30%, strongly believe that you did that. So we didn't get no, somewhat. So just a little like reflection back to you, brother. You
Appreciate that. Appreciate it.
Powerful piece. Okay. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna open up the room, open up the conversation a little bit, because we have Elisabeth Greer and Isaac Castelaz. I was practicing that to make sure I got it. All right. So let's invite Elisabeth and Isaac into the space. And if y'all have seen the film, you know that these two folks went through a grinder, all right? And life, and in reality, none of this is like made for television drama. This is real life, right? So I wanted to welcome Elisabeth and Isaac and just give you both, obviously one at a time, a chance to just kind of welcome our audience. Elisabeth, we'll start with you, if that's okay. Can you just, do you have any words for our audience today?
Of course. I just want to say thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. I see that most people have seen the movie, and so I think that will make for a richer discussion and will help a lot of the themes to resonate. And it's been a crazy ride bringing our message to everyone, and we're so grateful for every opportunity. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Elisabeth. Isaac.
Yes, thank you, everybody, for making time to be with us today. I hope that this conversation is enlightening, illuminating, that you take something away from it. It's wonderful to be amongst filmmakers and students who have a deep passion for justice and for equity, and obviously an interest in this film. So I hope that the conversation today is enriching for you. And thank you for having us, Manauvaskar.
It's a pleasure to have you guys here. Elisabeth, I'm gonna ask you a question, all right? And then I'm gonna drop a poll while the question's going on, because they kind of connect. Right, like one of the things that we talk about in shifting the narrative around public education is the ability to illuminate structural inequities, right? And there was a moment in the film, right, where you were with your father, and it was maybe like 3/4 of the way through the film or something like that, and then your father, and you were revealing to your father like what NTA was going through, and he said, this doesn't sound new to me. This is what I experienced in the Jim Crow South, right? Right. So I would love for you to respond to that question, but let me just drop this. Poll, okay? Hold on. All right, poll dropped. All right, Elisabeth, you can go. Thank you. So the question was, the question in the poll is, was Let the Little Light Shine able to illuminate any structural inequities, including structural racism, create inequitable contexts or outcomes, which, I'll let the audience, speak to that, but I would love for you to answer the question, Elisabeth, about, what your father said to you. I'm curious, how did that resonate to you when he said that?
It was really, the terms like shocking but not surprising sort of comes up, because of course, you know American history, you know about Jim Crow. I know my father's story. You know, he was born in the 40s, in the early 40s in Georgia, and did not come up to the North until the 60s, still the pre-civil rights era. And so he went through most of his entire childhood, and of course his beginning of his adult life, suffering under these conditions where he was basically told where he could go, where he couldn't go, what he could do, what he couldn't do, having society sort of trying to put limits on what he could attain, right? And so when I told him about what was going on, and my dad has, you know, he has a real sense of humor, and I think it really comes through in the film. And so he just, all he had to do was laugh. You know, he just laughed at it because it's so ridiculous that we're still dealing with this in 2022 that it's almost like he couldn't get mad at it. You know, it's like it's new day, same game, you know, and that nothing has changed in all of this time. In terms of the structural inequities, the only thing that has changed is the face of the people who are doing this to you. You know, as you can see from the film, now many of the people who are doing the oppressing, who are doing the sort of carrying the water for the rich white folks who really hold the levers of power, are Black and brown faces. So they're putting those faces out there and to tell us, a Black community, oh, this is good for you. I don't know why you guys are fighting this. This is a done deal. Just go ahead and sit down, as a way to try to make it more gentle, right? Like we would somehow take it better if it comes from someone from our community, right? I mean, obviously, everyone in the NTA community saw right through it, but you can see how white supremacy works, right? So the structure is still the same. We still want you in your place. We still want to literally move your Black bodies around and tell you where you can and where you cannot go, what you can have and what you cannot have. But instead of the people telling you, go sit over there, go, you know, stop talking, be quiet, stop protesting, being white people, now they're being primarily Black and brown people, you know, as a way to, I don't know, trying to make our medicine go down with sugar. I don't know. You know, so
better medicine.
right.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, Elisabeth. We'll come back, Elisabeth. We'll come back and we'll continue that a little bit more. But I wanted to get Isaac into the conversation a little bit. Isaac, you know, as a principal, right? Yeah, I mean, I want to say, like, you know, in the film, if folks haven't, you know, your journey in the film is just, to me, it was so incredible to know, like, the first year challenges you went through, and then having to come back and kind of, you know, one of the quotes is, you have to, you know, listen and study. You know, you say that in the film, when as a white principal coming into this predominantly Black and brown school, right? So I was just curious, you know, what was that journey like for you? What was the lesson that you learned from the journey that you made, you know, that's captured in this film?
I began my career in education in the year 2000, graduating from college. I took a job right out of undergrad in Chicago, and it had always been my passion to be a teacher, to be a history teacher. Well, let's say through my teenage years, growing into adulthood, it was something that I felt very strongly about, because I grew up with a social justice orientation, studying Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, the Black Panther Party, and other freedom fighters. And so I thought that coming back to Chicago, where I spent much of my time growing up, that I was joining the struggle, so to speak, that I was doing my part, that I was giving back. And in so doing that, I kind of congratulated myself. Hey, look at me, I'm a white guy and I'm teaching on the South Side of Chicago with a bunch of young Black children, and I'm gonna help them pull themselves out of poverty. It was a very, very much sort of a pat myself on the back sort of attitude that I had, which isn't to say that I didn't work hard as a teacher. I did, but it was a very congratulatory kind of attitude that I displayed in the way that I thought about my work. And it wasn't until I became principal at NTA that in fact I learned that I wasn't worthy of the children and the communities that I had been serving all along, that I wasn't doing anybody a favor. If anything, I had been doing harm. And as principal, for me to succeed, I had to listen and assume the innocence, the giftedness, the talent of the children that I was serving, the strength, the power, the intellect of the families that I served. And I had to learn how to join an already strong, vibrant community, as opposed to leading the community, fixing the community, repairing deficits, fighting against the so-called culture of poverty, or a poverty culture. These were notions that had been baked into me as a young white male, liberal-minded white male through undergraduate, and even through much of my career as an educator. But getting as close to the community as I did as principal, and struggling in the way that I did in my first year, it helped me unlearn some of the privilege, some of the notions of being a white educator in a predominantly Black environment, that helped me ultimately, I think, to succeed as principal and to help the school continue to advance and to grow. But it was only until I accepted the fact that I was not in fact worthy of the children and of the community that I was attempting to join, that I adopted a different posture that I think made all that possible. And so I was glad that Kevin captured that to an extent in the film. And sure, I'm glad to talk more about that or answer questions if there are any.
Yeah. I mean, folks, if you have questions for Isaac or Elisabeth or Kevin, please pop them in the chat. We'll try to get to them as soon as we can. I'm going to drop another poll. And while I drop this other poll, I'm going to ask all of you a question. One of the things we talk about is navigating, leveraging, and shifting frames, right? And what you talked about there, Isaac, is exactly some of the assumptions or preconceived notions that some of it, as we grow up in life, we kind of have within us, right? And we have to undo those things. We have to unlearn those things, right? In one of the pieces about the film that I thought was really powerful is this idea of seeing, beyond just teachers, parents and students, and seeing the system that operates around public education, right? But to toss it back to Elisabeth, right? As a parent, right? As someone who came into the story as a parent, I would love to hear your perspective as you said you didn't mind being, the angry Black woman because you were standing up, for something, and giving the middle finger to CPS, in a way, right? So I wanted to hear about what, your journey as a parent first, and then making that and then becoming a community organizer, right? And showing us how it's done. So I would love for you to speak about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think like most people, well, there were two reactions when this the plan to close down NTA sort of was unveiled to us very slowly. But when it became clear exactly what CPS was going to do, there were one of two reactions. One from the residents who had been in the neighborhood for a generation. They were like, they've done this before. And so we learned a lot about the history, and the former principal Amy Rome mentioned some of this in the movie about the past attempts, right, to close NTA, and it goes back even farther than that with the building of South Loop Elementary and what they did to the residents there. So some of the residents were just like, oh, yeah, we've been through this again. They moved us out of South Loop, and here we go again. And this is just what they do. And then there were those of us, my daughter was in kindergarten at the time, who were like, this is an outrage. We can't stand for this. This is terrible. And so in terms of community organizing, one of the challenges was to, number one, harness our collective outrage, those of us who are very angry about this, and number two, help to infuse the parents who have suffered under this system several times before with a sense of hope that we can actually beat them this time, right? Because in the past, they were literally moved around like chess pieces, on a playing board, picked up and moved from one school to another in the middle of a school year because they wanted to extradite Black children from South Loop Elementary. So they cut the bus service and said, that's not your school anymore in the middle of the school year. So those families, we had to build trust with them. First of all, because we were new to the community, we had younger children. So this information was new to us. And then we had to build hope amongst all of us that we could continue to fight and could win. And that was really, really difficult, both of those things. And I understand why people who have been, continuously told that that the decisions that they want to make for themselves and for their children and for their lives, are not under their own control, why they would give up, right? Why you would just give up. And there were a lot of people who just gave up and they're like, there's nothing you can do. They've done this before. They're going to just do it again. Why are we even fighting? And then there were parents who knew that this, who were very angry about it, but who also didn't have it within themselves to stick it in with the fight, that it was just easier for them and they had the resources to just leave, just move their children out of the school, put them in a different school. They're like, yes, this is an outrage, this is terrible. You guys should really fight, and we're gonna move, our children to another school. And so it was really difficult to try to find, be able to try to coalesce like one train, like we all got to get on the same train so we can move forward as a group, as a unified group and a unified voice. And any arguments that we had amongst ourselves, any disagreements that we may have on approaches, like we need to keep that within our own group and not show sort of a fraction and not show weakness to the system, because then that is how they get into those cracks and try to dismantle you. They tried many times. I mean, they would do things like they would text Isaac on the sly and be like, tell your parents, just chill, and they would text him and be like, Isaac, don't you want that new principalship of a high school? You would be awesome. So they tried many ways to drive wedges between us and Isaac and between our families, as a group. And so community organizing, what in this case, in general, is very difficult. This was my first time doing it. So of course I was completely overwhelmed and I had no idea what I was doing. But I was able to tap into a lot of the organizations that helped to fight diet, and they were so generous with their time and their knowledge and letting me in on all their secrets. And so I really appreciate them, the sort of the elders of the movement, passing on their wisdom to me, because we would not have won without their wisdom and their help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was the community theme is very present in this film. Like a couple of the quotes that resonate with me is hearing Audrey talk about you got to connect with the community, right? Like that whole idea of like, what the early days of NTA did to really connect the community. As you were coming on, Isaac, Isaac, one of the parts of the story that I found very meaningful as someone who works puts a lot of thinking around education, right? And my work is grounded in education in many ways. It's like the scene with the clarinet in the beginning, and Kevin, you can share a little bit here too, right? Of sharing that moment, and then Isaac's like, it's my fault, it's my fault. I gotta take responsibility there. But then we also see you, with Sorrel and in those personal spaces in those rooms, right? Like really, letting them know that you have high, expectations for them and want to nurture, want to create a space. So I would love for you to talk a little bit, Isaac, about like, there's a lot of conversation in school communities around whole school communities, right? Like the school is the center of the community, right? Like what does it mean to create that in the environment? So I would love for you to speak a little bit about how you were able to do that at NTA.
One of the things that principals or aspiring administrators are taught, I think, in a lot of the ed leadership programs, especially the more popular ones, is that a principal must have a commanding presence, that everyone in the school, strangers or otherwise, must recognize the principal from a mile away, from all the way down the hall, should be able to sense the principal when the principal is walking through the hallways or coming around the corner. And I suppose I can see where that logic comes from, but that was never the way that I operated as a school principal. The highest compliment that you could pay me as principal was when you thought that the teacher walking down the hall was the principal, or the security guard greeting children in the morning was the principal, or someone in the lunchroom. Is that the principal? The way they're helping kids and talking with kids, is that the principal? That is the thing I would take compliment in. For me, the best way and the most important way that a principal pronounces them in a school is by permeating a strong sense of community, such that you may not visit, you may not meet me when you come to the school, but when you come to the school, you will feel welcomed, you will feel embraced, you will feel warm, you will feel like you're a part of a community. Even if you never said, shake my hand or talk with me or even lay eyes on me directly. And it takes time. It takes moments like some of those that you see in the film to create that sense of trust, of relation, of community. It boils down, though, I guess the easiest way that I could explain it would be, at least in my opinion, is a sense of empathy. And I want to use that word very carefully, because we think sometimes empathy means to lower an expectation or to change an expectation for a student in this case. And it doesn't mean that at all. For example, in that scene you highlighted, I didn't stand up to protect my young men because they hadn't performed well and then let them off the hook. It was, they're going to come back and perform another time. They're going to try this again at some future date. So it wasn't that they didn't try again. It was that I know that they weren't happy. There were reasons why, and I didn't want them to share in that by themselves. But also, you're going to try this again at some point later in the year. And so empathy has a very, I think, specific meaning, to be in something, to share something with another person, and to empower them to move through and navigate and process that thing that they're feeling. So that's, I guess, one of the things that I will point to in terms of how to create that kind of community as a school leader.
Thank you. And I want to get you back in here, Kevin, because I haven't heard your voice in a while, and I want to make sure you're still with me.
I'm still here. I'm enjoying the conversation.
The choices you made, right? You made some really important choices, right? I think as someone who looks at education in a particular way, to take us into that room with Isaac, to, there's this theme that keeps coming up around student voice throughout the film, right? The students have powerful voices, they have powerful stories, they're taking ownership, they're sort of speaking out in many ways. And I feel like student voice is something that's very strong in this film, right? And I just want to, what was it about who you are as a filmmaker or this story that, made these decisions? You said you didn't really think about, narrative shift, when you were making this film, but like, so much of what we're seeking, you know, in an education community to like shift people's understanding around, you know, whether it's student voice or creating the kind of environments for young people to you know, succeed in, you know, you captured. And so I just wanted you to really speak about, you know, where did that come? Is that something that you just felt naturally? Was it just part of the story? I'm just curious.
You know, I think students are wonderful. Students are funny. They have so much energy, intelligence, passion in them. And so it's a no-brainer in my eyes to have their point of view be strong in this particular story. I remember when, you know, we were just kind of in the very beginning talking about filming. I remember talking to Elisabeth about this too, because we were filming a lot of the protesting moments and things of that nature, and just starting to build a relationship with Isaac and figuring out how we could film in the school. And I remember telling them this story is very important and it's an injustice and it's wrong, but like we need to be in the school and be able to see what's going on in the school, and not only meet the teachers who are providing this great community and building this community that Isaac spoke of, but we need to see the students, and we need to see how that's all washing over them and how they're responding to it, and then kicking it back out, you know, to the city in this regard and stuff. So it was always important for me to like, we have to find some students and see it from their point of view. And a lot of that kind of just came organically as we were filming. And I mentioned that the 8th grade graders during that year were very prominent in a lot of the protesting. And then Taylor was a particular student who was really at all the protests. She was at all the ones that we were at for sure. And, you know, at the city hall meetings, at the marches, et cetera, et cetera. So she seemed like a person that we definitely wanted to follow. And then when you talk about other students in the film, you look at a person like Ya, who in our eyes was a student who potentially could have gotten lost if the proposal goes through. You know, she had started to build this relationship with Isaac and opening up to him in ways that she wasn't opening up to other teachers at that time. And that burgeoning mentorship that was going on there was so compelling to me that we had to keep abreast of it. You know, one of the things that we kind of had to cut out of the film was this graphic novel club that Isaac had put together for a lot of the students there at the school. And it was an opportunity for students from any class, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Isaac, maybe you should tell the audience about what the graphic novel club was and what your intentions were, because even though it's not in the film, it does speak to building community and providing voice, especially providing voice for these students here who, you know, were in search of their own.
The graphic novel club was for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, but we did make some exceptions especially when there was interest. And it started because the year before, I believe that the year before I met you, Kevin, I was working with a group of 4th graders in a small group. And that's when I got to know Ya and a handful of other students that aren't in the film, but they all had an interest in manga. And so we had some of those books in the school, and I had some of those books at home. So I would bring them to school and they would read through them, and then they would come to my office at lunchtime and hang out and read manga and play board games and stop by after school. And eventually it grew into a full-fledged club through 5th grade, 6th grade, and then even through 7th grade. So that's how that started, just for context.
And I think for me, you know, in terms of telling the story and being in the school, you know, it was not about, obviously, sure, grades are important and getting good grades are important and all that, but I was not interested so much in showing the students getting good grades. Like I was interested in seeing the community here that was being built and what kind of positive influence that had on each child there. And I think you see that in the scenes that are in the movie. It was no doubt, you mentioned the student Congress scene with the clarinet players. You know, the initial intention in filming that was to film this event here at the school, the celebration of the student Congress, where, you know, children have been voted into specific offices, and you know, it's a segment of democracy here, an example of democracy here being done at NTA. So it was an opportunity to kind of celebrate that, and that was something that was cool. And then when this moment happens of the clarinet players and that not going as planned, I just felt all that transpired that we've talked about was what NTA was all about for me. And it spoke so well to what the community was all about. And one of the things that we like to do, at least what I like to do as a filmmaker, is, you know, I will show a cut of the movie as we're getting closer to finalizing it to the film participants, to the main film participants. So they can weigh in, not necessarily give them a director's cut or what have you, but certainly it's a collaborative thing in my eyes, you know, a collaborative moment. I remember one of the notes that Isaac did say was like, you know, that the student Congress scene at the beginning, I'm not sure that like put this in the best light, you know, off the top there. And I had to kind of remind him, well, this is not the reason why it's in there. It's not the reason to embarrass those children. It's what happened, the moment of learning for everybody there. That was what was important. And it really showed to me why NTA was a special place. And as I think about it now, and I've thought about it previously to that, and thought about Isaac's note and everything, and you could talk about it too here, Isaac, but I could see why he might say that, because just like me, not maybe noticing some of these narrative shift elements and not really thinking about that, like he's probably not thinking about it from that level maybe as well, because it's so inherent into his process as an educator right now, you know? So it might have been a little bit of a blind spot, a good blind spot, you know? It's not something that he's gonna sit up there and toot his horn about. And any of those educators in that building are gonna toot their horns about, you know? So I don't know. Do you remember all that, Isaac, or no? Is that all? Is that all?
I do.
Watch.
No, I remember that. I remember that. You explained it. You explained it well. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I want to share some polls. I got some poll numbers. We got some poll numbers. All right. Hold on.
538 poll here.
Okay. Hold on. So we got the latest polls. Did the film help to name participants of the education system beyond teachers, parents, and students? We have 90%, close to 90% of folks felt that you did. We had 10% that said somewhat. So that's interesting. And then the second question was, did the film help shift us from individualism to collective responsibility and benefits, right? And 100% of folks either said yes or strongly towards. All right, so I just wanted to share that with you, because I feel like, you know, that'll move us into our next, you know, segment where, you know, I feel like your film offers us this moment, because it's gonna come out nationally, you know, on PBS, something, a place where most folks have access to seeing, you know, this idea about building power and participation, right? You know, and so like I wanted to take this opportunity to open up this fishbowl to folks who are here with us tonight. You know, whether you've seen the film or you're curious about the film, we would love for you to join with us in this conversation. And if there are any folks who would like to take themselves off of mute, or, you know, put themselves on camera, if you have a question or a contribution that you would like to make to this conversation, I would like for y'all to, you know, feel free to jump in. And when, and this is our second call, and I got to be, really real because I'm that type of dude, right? So, the last call, I wasn't patient with this moment, right? I didn't let it happen, right? So I'm just gonna be patient. Right? I just remind myself to be patient. Folks have a little bit of, fear sometimes coming on Zooms and stuff. All right, but if there's any questions or any curiosities for Kevin, Isaac, Elisabeth, here we have a question coming in. Oh, there's some folks who coming off Zoom. Okay, we have a Mike. You want to say something, or you have a question?
Sure. Thanks, Manauvaskar. Kevin, everybody, thank you for the beautiful film. I was watching it today. A little tearjerker at the end. One of the questions I had, and I guess this is for kind of all three, and I don't want to, spoiler alert, but I don't want to give away too much. But Kevin, when we talked, or sorry, Isaac, when we talked about sort of the risk to doing this work, and for you it was very real, and they talked a lot through the film about the job, and you're getting texts, and is it going to be your job after this is done? And so that was a very real representation of the pushback and sort of the and what you would have dealt at a very real level. Elisabeth, I'm curious from your standpoint, what did you face in being that community organizer in terms of pushback, in terms of those sorts of things that you would have sort of dealt with at that level?
Thanks, Mike. So are you asking about really consequences?
Yeah, did you find that, or because I know we explored it in the film, it was explored through Isaac's viewpoint, but I didn't see that explored through your viewpoint. I'm just curious what you encountered.
Yeah, I think the biggest consequence was probably to my mental and physical health. I mean, it was absolutely exhausting. And when Kevin showed me when he sent me the rough cut of the film, I mean, it was, what was it, Kevin, like a year or two later after the events were over?
Yeah.
I mean, I had it triggered me. It took me right back. My heart started pounding. I started to get the adrenaline came right back, and not in a good way, right? Not in a good way. And so that was really the biggest consequence to me, because I was ignoring and pushing down I would not allow myself to imagine a world in which we lost. So I lived every day and went to every protest and did every action with the idea that this was going to be the thing that worked. And so I think what you saw at the end there, when, and not to spoil it for folks who haven't seen the movie yet, but what you see at the end when Isaac makes a certain announcement, you see me break down into tears. And a lot of that is because of all of that emotion that I had been carrying with me and not trying to show when I was out there, in the street protesting, because there were so many people who were struggling emotionally on the team that I felt like I had to be strong for everybody. And so when people would get down, I was like, no, we could do it. Meanwhile, in the back of my head, it's like, what if we don't? But I felt like I couldn't express that doubt in front of other people, because I didn't want anybody else to be sort of riddled with doubt. And so that really was the biggest consequence. And on sort of on a humorous note, so when I agreed to lend my name to the lawsuit, so you see, at the end that it's Greer versus and some of my other friends in Chicago versus Chicago Public Schools. At first, when the lawyers asked me, I just sort of enthusiastically, without hesitation, I was like, yeah, absolutely, I will lend my name to the lawsuit. And then when I got home and I told my husband, and he was like, you work for the city, right? Is that a good idea to be suing the city when you work for the city? And I was like, oh, right. But I'm a tenured professor at a community college. And so I felt like, okay, I have some protections. Plus the City College of Chicago have a very strong social justice, lean to it, and I'm in a union. So I'm like, if they come after me, I'm gonna have to fight that one too. So yes, put my name on the lawsuit. It's fine. So, but certainly my biggest consequence was emotional, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
There's a couple of the questions that are coming in the chat. This is from Alicia. She says, "What impact do you hope for after it airs on television?" And Kevin, this is a good chance to plug the community engagement piece. So I would love to hear from all of you all, but definitely, Kevin, if you could start us off. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we would like to do is continue to take the movie directly to communities that see themselves in this story, communities that are struggling to find their voice, who are looking to fight whatever obstacle that they have to overcome. We want to take it to them and be able to show that you can fight whatever that obstacle might be. You can fight fight for social justice. You can find your voice. Continue to fight for equity in education. Those are kind of the two strong hallmarks that this movie triumphs. So we're going to take it to communities across the country directly as part of our impact campaign, and have small screenings and community conversations with those who need it, who want it, who are desiring for this opportunity, who really see themselves in the film. So that's kind of my hope, and that's our not really a dream. That's what we're going to be doing. Once the film kind of gets out on PBS and is on the PBS app for 2 months after that. And so that's what 2023 is looking like for us.
Elisabeth, Isaac, anything you would like to share about what you hope to see?
Well, obviously, I hope that this film cures all of the problems in public education. So that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm hoping for, obviously. But I guess to be a bit more realistic, I hope that anyone who sees it sort of decides to take the next step in their advocacy, in their mobilizing, in their fight. If you're a parent who's never been to a local school council meeting, then go to one. Maybe bring a couple parents with you. If you're active already with a group of parents, but you haven't actually impacted school improvement in some way, begin to press on that. Try to find an inroad with an administrator or with other parents. Find a way to take your activism to another level. If you're already doing that, then try to find another organization in the city in which you work that you can coalesce with to grow your movement even bigger, to make the impact that you want. If you're an educational leader, a district level leader, I hope that you reimagine the way that you support principals, that you support schools, that you interact with and build relationships with families. So whomever you are, I hope that it inspires as I guess I've said before, and as Kevin likes to say, that it inspires the activists within you to take action, big or small.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I would just agree with all of that. And also I would always, I hope that this movie, it's a David and Goliath story. So it shows that David can sometimes win. And so I want people to feel as though their voice is powerful, their voice can be heard, and it's never a done deal. That was one of the things that was constantly pushed in our face. Just sit down. Like they would talk to us like we were children, right? Just sit down, stop talking, stop protesting. It's a done deal. Like, what are you doing? It was very condescending. And so I hope that people will never take that sort of done deal rhetoric into their heart and soul and use that as a way to silence them, because change is possible, right? And you can disrupt the power balance. You can disrupt it.
Thank you for that, Elisabeth. I'm curious about the classroom that we saw earlier in this call. Classroom, where are you at? Where are you guys still with us? Where's that classroom at?
There's a question from someone in the classroom in the chat.
Oh, yeah. Miguel. Okay, all right. Here's the classroom. Okay, where's Miguel? I want to know who Miguel is. There he is. Hey, Miguel, thanks for asking. School of Labor and Urban Studies. My question is, how long were the children heard before Pastor asked them if they were, oh, yes, they were done. That was a real intense moment, yes.
Thanks for asking about that, Miguel. Let me tell you about that situation. Because Kevin was only able to show us a little piece of it, but our students came in with like a whole, they decayed like a call and response, powerful speech where they would speak in unison and then they would speak individually. And then it was like a staccato. It was like a song. It was like the best, poem that you ever went to a poetry slam and heard. And when Pastor Granberry got up so condescendingly and said, "Are you finished?" I mean, I already had hated being there. I hated him. I still do. I am not ashamed to say it. I hate Chip with the passion of 1,000 suns, who's the CPS representative who also got up there. And the way that they tried to gaslight those students by telling them, we're not closing your school, sit down and be quiet. They did not listen to a single thing those students said. And a tiny piece that Kevin caught was that actually Chip and Audrey got into a fight during that meeting. So the children, when he started to give them, try to give them this dressing down, she jumped in, like a mama bear, you're not going to talk about my kids like that. You're not going to talk to them like that. And Kevin caught the moment when he was like, basically like, I'm not talking to you. And somebody standing next to Audrey had to basically hold her back because she was ready to go after him. It was absolutely disgusting. It was condescending. It was paternalistic. It was, everything that you should not do as an administrator, as a person, as someone in authority when talking to young people. And it really, at that moment, I would say, was sort of everything that was wrong with the district and wrong with the plan. And it didn't move the needle at all. Their hearts were not moved at all. And as you can see afterwards, the kids were very angry, and they should have been. They had every right to be.
Thank you for that. Cool. SLU folks, any last questions? We only have a few more minutes left, so it's the last chance. There's a lot of folks in the room. I just want to make sure.
So yes, this is Miguel here. Just a follow-up. So were they allowed to finish their speech? Okay, because the way the film was cut, it showed them entering and then the pastor asking, "Are you done?"
Yeah, they were allowed to finish. I think probably only because the pastors were so shocked. The pastor was so shocked that this was happening that they were able to get through their entire thing before he went into his tirade. Yeah.
Well, thanks. Could you guys tell us a little bit about what you guys are working on and what you guys studying in the classroom?
Studying community organization.
Nice.
To me.
Go ahead.
It's a perfect time for us in the class because we are actually thinking a lot about like what community organizing feels like and how power building happens. We're also working on some sort of personal type statements where people are exploring like where they come from and their role in the movement, right? And that there are a lot of different roles, a lot of ways to get in, that you can have different roles at different times in your life. So basically, we only got to the part of the reunion from the public housing. So we're on the edge of our seat.
Okay, we won't spoil it for you. We won't spoil it for you. Okay, well, you guys have some homework to do then tonight. Okay, well, thank you for joining us. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Any last comments or questions before we have some final thoughts from the folks here?
There's a question from also Alicia in the chat that is also a question that I'm holding. It said, how did your participation in the documentary affect you during your fight to sustain NTA? How did it affect you after it started screening? I think there's something powerful about when a camera gets introduced into a struggle. There's something for me about the stakes being amplified, knowing that this might reach a bigger audience. So how did that impact you? And what does it feel like now for this story to be shared so broadly?
At the time, it impacted absolutely nothing whatsoever. And by that, what I mean is I didn't do anything differently on the days that Kevin was coming to the school. I didn't dress any differently. You can see on a lot of times he came on Friday and I was all whiskered up on Friday because I shave early in the week and it grows in through Friday. I didn't do anything differently to impress the cameras, to prepare for Kevin. We took some pains to make sure that he wasn't discovered. So we had to play secret squirrel here and there a time or two. So in that respect, there was some evasion happening, but I considered all the ramifications from the very beginning when Elisabeth approached me with the possibility of someone documenting the fight. And so once I resolved that I was all in, I didn't change anything at all because first off, it wouldn't be a true documentary if I did that. And second of all, I knew that what was happening was wrong and all Kevin needed to do was to document it for other people to see that and hopefully take something away from it.
Yeah, it's one thing. Kevin joined us. We were already about a year into fighting, and nothing had moved the needle. And so when Kevin said, I've been watching, you're on Facebook. I don't know if we mentioned this, but Kevin and I go way back to the first grade. We've known each other since first grade. And so we had lost contact after 8th grade, but we had reconnected via Facebook. And so he had seen me posting all of these things on Facebook, and he was coming off of one of his projects and looking for something else. And so he's like, you seem to be doing something. What is this? Do you want to come? He said, can I just follow you around? I was like, sure. Because for us, nothing had moved the needle. So we were just like, maybe this is the thing that will stop it in some way. We didn't know what it would turn out to be. We didn't know how we might use this, but we were all in. And like Isaac said, it didn't change anything that we were doing. Of course, for some parents, when he got introduced in the school, people would be like, why is there a camera here? But what got really funny after a while is people started to expect to see Kevin. And Kevin would come to many, many JP corners. So JP, the mayor, the security guard, he would, on Fridays, we see us sometimes sitting around that table, hashing out plans, and Kevin would often be there recording. And so when Kevin would not show up, one parent was like, where's the cameraman at? Where's the cameraman at? He needs to be getting this. He needs to be getting this. We got so used to him that he became really part of the community. And so nobody behaved any differently. What you see is very authentic. I mean, it's what those people on the screen are the people that, I still see every day. And in terms of the ramifications afterwards, the reception's been outstanding and it's been very heartwarming. And I have to say that as many times as I've seen the film, the way that Kevin puts it together, it still gets me. There are still moments when I'm, crying, I'm ugly crying, I'm choking up, and I still have these moments where I'm like, what's going to happen next? Even though I was there, I know exactly what happens. There's just something about his storytelling that makes it, live again every single time I see it.
Just want to read a comment, Michelle Wyman. Thank you for this today, especially since it means revisiting emotions and triggers that comes with it. It's so much of yourselves to share. The film is fantastic. It will make a difference in so many lives going forward. Wow, it's pretty amazing. Kevin, I would like for you to have the last question. A very simple question. What advice would you have for folks who are curious about telling stories? Whether they're young filmmakers or experienced filmmakers, or folks who are maybe organizers or who are learning community organizing that want to think about using stories as part of their strategy.
I think you have to be passionate beyond belief. I think you have to be almost obsessive in that passion. I think about if for any reason I didn't want to get up and go to the school and film something that could have been pivotal, I would have missed that. I couldn't think of all the days that I sat in front of my computer in my basement by myself, editing, and that went on for a year plus. And any of those times I could have said, I'm tired, I don't want to do this anymore. But I didn't. And I came back to, in that particular instance of, I have sacrificed so much in terms of this community has given me an opportunity to tell their story. And I owe so much to them. I have to do everything in my power to make sure that I at least get this project completed and out into the world. And what will happen will happen. We don't have much control over how it's going to get out and where it's going to be and who's going to feel it. But you do have control over getting it done, and that comes from your heart. So whether that be the film that you want to do, whether that be the community organizing that you want to do, you have to be passionate about it. You're the only person at some point is going to be as driven to get your goal accomplished, to get your story told, to get your community activated. It's got to come from the heart. So just really dig deep. Don't lose sight. Don't lose track in that. And very much like Elisabeth said, she never gave an opportunity to think about what if. It's the same thing. You have to keep driven, keep positive, and you can reach your goal.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for dedicating all that time. And thank you, Elisabeth and Isaac, for being amazing, freedom fighters in a sense, for going out there and standing up for what you believe in. I really enjoyed this conversation with you all tonight. Once again, we'll put a couple of links up in the chat just so folks have it before we leave. Let's drop the strategy screen if folks are interested in learning about narrative shift for public education. And we'll drop the link to, Kevin, why don't you tell us the website and how folks can get engaged with the community engagement efforts?
Yeah, please follow our website, www.lightshinefilm.com. You can sign up to our newsletter, and that'd be a great way to get the latest information on the communities that we're going to come to. We're also on Instagram, Lightshine Film, Twitter, Lightshine Doc, Facebook, Lightshine Doc. So we're on all of them there, and it'd be great to have you join our community as we continue to roll the film out.
Excellent. And I just want to say you passed the strategy screen test. The film passed the strategy screen test.
I'm glad for that.
Colors.
Thank God.
And I didn't grade it on a curve either. I didn't grade on a curve either.
That'd have been something if we came back with some D's or something, right? Like, oh boy, we gotta go back to the editing room.
Yeah, no, thank you all for coming. I hope this film is inspiring to the movement as it is for me personally and all the folks who have shared in this conversation. And thank you all for joining us tonight. And let's continue the conversation offline. Let's get in touch with Kevin. You can be in touch with us here at Media Sutra if we can be of support. Thank you guys again for being part of this event tonight.
Thank you, Manauvaskar.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Take care,
Good night.
Manauvaskar.
Thank you.